And so I'm going to call Dayton to the podium, and he is going to go over the analysis for us. Welcome, Dayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Dayton Lemunyan. I'm a fiscal analyst with KLRD, and I'll be presenting the budget of KNI and Parsons. These two institutions are our institutions for individuals with intellectual disabilities. So you should see a document that looks like this and has that at the top. That'll be State Institutions for Intellectual Disabilities. And we will go ahead and begin on page 8, or sorry, page 6. That is the fiscal year 2023 current year analysis. The 2022 legislature approved $61 million all funds, including $31.8 million SGF. There were SGF reappropriations of $575,310 that resulted in a legislative approved amount of $61.65 million all funds. The agency revised estimate begins from that point. And if you look at number 2, there are about $6 million. These represent the 24/7 pay plan funds. These were approved by the 2022 legislature. You also see in number 3 other adjustments for the hospitals, and the governor does concur. So I'm happy to stand for any questions you might have on 23.
Okay. Committee questions thus far? Seeing none, proceed.
All right, now we'll turn to page 8. This is the fiscal year 2024 budget year analysis. We begin from the ending point of the previous year. That's $68.2 million all funds, including $38.4 million SGF. You see number 1, the two agencies requested $1.5 million in salary increases for support staff, and they have other adjustments totaling a decrease of $3.8 million. The governor did not recommend adoption of the agency's enhancement request, resulting in a total of $64.4 million all funds. And I'm happy to stand for questions on the budget.
Okay, committee, what questions do we have on the analysis? Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the 24/7 pay plan was a one-off, or I thought it was going to continue because we get quite a reduction in 24 compared to 23. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Representative, that is due to the mechanism of how the funds are transferred. So when we get to the KDAD's budget next week, you'll see that amount in their budget for fiscal year 2024 and a decrease in 2023. So the net effect is 0. It's just transferring between the agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks.
Any other questions? Representative Ballard.
Sorry, I'm also the one doing that, but I was looking at all other adjustments. So all other adjustments result in a decrease of $3.7 million. Okay, I think I see it. When I first looked at it, it didn't make sense, but.
That is the, if I may.
Okay, please.
That is the 24/7 pay plan funds that I described that decrease. So you'll see a corresponding increase in the KDAD's budget for that year.
Okay.
So that's the primary reason for that reduction.
All right, thank you.
Other questions, committee? I'm seeing none. Thank you, Dick. Next, we'll call Laura Howard, Secretary, or someone in her stead.
Dayton turned off the microphone. Well, good for you. I always forget to do that. Scott Bruner with KDADS. It's my very distinct privilege to get to work with an incredible group of people that work at the 4 state hospitals. We're going to have a slide presentation that looks like this. That's exactly right. The content will be the same, and I think the page numbers will be the same as well. They should be. I apologize for that. We'll swap them out. We've got some here on the side that we can swap out for you. No disrespect intended. They didn't use them first. You're getting fresh copies too, by the way, so
That's
I
what,
apologize for that. Apologize for that. I had a really good speech started too, so I apologize for interrupting myself. But I have the real privilege of working with a large group of people that operate our 4 state hospitals, and I'll introduce the group tomorrow when you talk about the mental health hospitals as well. But between the superintendents and the direct care staff, nursing staff, custodians, maintenance, engineers. It's an incredible team of people to really serve the most vulnerable Kansans in these institutional settings that are operated by the state of Kansas. And I get to stand up in front of you and provide some comments and context, but I'll turn the presentation over to the superintendents here in just a minute, and they can describe what their hospitals do and how they fit into the service system for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the state and the work that they've been doing over the last couple of years. We've got the slide deck that we'll walk through with you. I just wanted to make a couple of overall comments about the hospitals for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And a couple of the comments will be similar for the mental health hospitals as well when you get to those tomorrow. But KNI and Parsons State Hospital and Training Center, as Dayton said, serve individuals with severe lifelong disabilities. They have intellectual or developmental disabilities that started largely when they were children. That happened before or shortly after birth, and they're lifelong. These are conditions that they've had, that they will have through their whole life and require some level of care throughout their life. Our hospitals at Parsons, in Parsons, the Parsons State Hospital and KNI here in Topeka, serve people at the more severe end of the intellectual and developmental disability spectrum, and the superintendents will talk about that. They largely have medical needs that require an institutional level of care, and generally aren't successful living in the community. When you talk about the KDAD's budget here in the next week or so, we'll talk a lot about the home and community-based services waiver for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our hospitals are at the one end of the continuum of services for those folks, where they've largely tried to be work or live in the community, haven't been successful, and need the more structured care that they get at our 2 facilities. On slide 3, just again, a couple pieces of context. Both of these hospitals are surveyed by the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. They're intermediate care facilities for people with mental retardation. That's the federal standard that they're licensed against. They do receive Medicaid funding as a condition of that survey and qualification. The services that they provide are individualized, person-centered, and really focus on trying to help each individual that live on the campus meet their personal goals, whatever those might be, involvement in the community, involvement with their families, and really to be as engaged as they can in the lifestyle that they would like to lead. And our team is designed around meeting those needs, whatever they might be, but whether it's a physical need or a training need through work or service or other kinds of things. And again, the superintendents will talk more about that. On slide 4, we put a couple of data slides together with questions that you commonly ask about the hospitals, so you have all that information in one place. And on slide 4, we show you the budgeted census. So how many beds we're budgeted for in the current authority and what our average census is on each campus. That's the fiscal year to date, so from July of 2022 through the 1st of January of this year. And so KNI's got 126 budgeted beds, and their census is around 125 on average. And at Parsons, they're budgeted for 163 and have a census of about 153. There is a note there that says that includes the Sexual Predator Treatment Program, or SPTP. Superintendent Dixon can talk more about that, but there is one cottage, and with a second cottage that's available that serves people that are in the Sexual Predator Treatment Program and are in the process of reintegrating back to the community. But they're in that census count as well. In terms of staffing, you can see the authorized positions for both of the campuses. And Dayton kind of gave you that overall number. That's an important number. Those are both important numbers to put some context around. If you look at slide number 5, those are how many positions are authorized. What we've got actually filled, you can pick up from the data that's on slide number 5. So again, as of the 1st of January, our turnover rate at KNI was about 29%, a little over 29%. So that's not quite 1 in 3, but almost 1 in 3 positions turned over the course of last year, and the vacancy rate's 20%, and that's similar at Parsons State Hospital as well. So when you see there are 437 positions, 20% of those are vacant on a typical day at either of those campuses. We'll talk about staffing, we'll talk about vacancy rates, but we wanted you to have the numbers in front of you as you go through your deliberation. And then the last comment I would make is on slide 6, just about hospital funding. There's really 3 main funding sources for the hospitals. There's the state general fund, there's Medicaid disproportionate share funding, which is money that flows through the Medicaid program that helps compensate for the costs of serving people who don't have health insurance. That's what disproportionate share is. And then we do bill Medicare and private insurance for care for individuals that where they have those kinds of coverages. This is true for all 4 of the state hospitals, but those monies from Medicaid flow into KDADs based on regular monthly billings. And then we redistribute that money back out to the campuses, so you'll see some transfers in the budget as you look through it. KNI and Parsons generate the most Medicaid revenue, kind of straight billing revenue through Medicaid. Many of the people, or I think almost all, are Medicaid eligible by virtue of their incomes. So they generate a lot of the revenue, and then that's distributed around the system. Adair Acute Care, Larned, generate more of the disproportionate share hospital revenue because they operate more like hospitals, and then we balance out the needs across the system. But you'll see all those kinds of funding sources in the agency budgets. The last couple of slides, Mr. Chair, are just the agency budgets. Dayton and Legislative Research, when they present the budget, they do it as a system, or both hospitals together. These are just the numbers for each hospital over each of the 3 fiscal years. It's in the budget that you're discussing. And Mr. Chair, I'll be available for questions. Sometimes I have to help the superintendents with questions, but that is uncommon, but may come up. But other than that, I'm happy to answer questions now or turn it over to the superintendents to start their presentations.
Okay, why don't we see if there are questions at this point? I'm not seeing any, so just have whomever you wish come out forward.
Sure.
And just have them identify themselves.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
We'll have Kathy Stifler, the superintendent at KNI, come up. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to get to share information with you about Kansas Neurological Institute. KNI, as you saw, supports adults, and our mission is to assist each person who lives there to have a meaningful life, which is very different for each individual. We accomplish that through helping ensure the well-being of the individuals, providing opportunities for choice and relationships, recognizing the individuality of each person, and helping people participate in our local community. KNI, as of today, serves 126 people in 20 homes, and those homes are within 4 large buildings. 84% of our folks who we support are in the severe to profound range of intellectual disability. And 78% of our people have lived at KNI for more than 10 years. We have our population trends are long. 30% have lived at KNI for more than 50 years. So when we talk about it being home, it is definitely home for the people who we provide services to. Healthcare needs. Many of our individuals are unable to walk. 92% are nonverbal. They don't speak. Folks have epilepsy, some type of autism, cerebral palsy, osteoporosis. We have a lot of people who are unable to eat a normal type diet and they have to have their food pureed or they could choke. We have a number of people who receive nourishment through tube feedings, not through their mouth, and folks with respiratory issues requiring breathing treatments and suctioning. Over the last year, we've been very busy with COVID responses, working to ensure the safety of the people who we support. We've had some new admissions. Those were a little bit challenging because of COVID. We have had high level of guardian satisfaction as evidenced by the responses that we received from the guardians in the survey. We've spent a lot of this last year streamlining the training that our direct support staff receive so that we can ensure that they're provided the very best training that they can receive. And we have community outreach such as food distribution, dental care, things like that, as well as special events. Initiatives going forward. We really need to focus on, and we are focusing on, increasing and stabilizing our direct support and nursing staff. We have numerous openings in nursing and direct support positions, which are critical. We do have focused on expanding training so that staff who are hired are really able to promote community involvement and building relationships. Resuming opportunities for community inclusion and employment, and increasing our community outreach. Going forward, we're going to resume and increase medical and therapeutic services for folks at K&I who can't get those services through community providers. Those can be primary care services, surgery recovery support, counseling services, seating clinics for people who use wheelchairs, as well as other services. We'll continue to work with the partners who we have in the community, and we have a number of great community partners. And you'll see them all on the slide. I'm not going to list them all. Topeka Fire Department, though, they've been awesome to work with. Community blood drives, we do harvester food distributions. There's just quite a number of community partners, as you can see. Changes in our approved budget. We have staffing contract expenses for nursing and other staff. We work with employment agencies to bring in additional nursing and direct support staff as we need them. COVID relief funding through ARPA, bonuses paid to employees for COVID, and recruiting and retention efforts through advertising contracts. And with that, I am happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Committee, questions for the conferee? Representative Ballard.
Mm-hmm. We have admissions where folks have been denied services in the community, and the community services currently aren't meeting their needs. We also have taken some transfers from Parsons State Hospital, which allowed them the opportunity then to bring someone else in who needed something specific that Parsons provided. Does that answer? Yeah, yes. Yes.
Thank you.
That's That is my understanding, yes. Have come in? I do. Which we appreciate that.
Well, no, that's right, but I'm aware, but that's why when you said new admissions, I got excited, then I thought, ooh, what has happened that I don't know about?
I am new to KNI. I've been there about 9 months. My understanding is we had 2 admissions this past year.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Committee, other questions? Seeing none, do you want to switch over to the next part of the program?
Yes, Mike Dixon will be coming up to present on Parsons.
All right. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. If I may, could I address the moratorium question that you
Yes,
asked?
please do.
There wasn't technically a moratorium at KNI. They just were really slow to bring people in because of bed space. Since Kathy has been superintendent there, she has looked at admissions a little differently, and she's wanted to increase their numbers and bring people in. So she's been much more open to it than past administrations, I would say. And she has, like she said, she's looked at Parsons State Hospital to see who they could get out of our hospital into there so we could bring somebody with a little bit more challenging behavior in that KNI is really not equipped to deal with.
Yes, Representative Ballard.
I will respond to that. There was specifically written that KNI would not accept new people because they tried to close it. And part of it was if you tried to close it because they were concerned about the cost per person and you continued to bring it in, it was a retaliation basically. Like, we tried to close it, you couldn't close it, now you can't take anyone unless it's documentation that the services were not available in the community. So it wasn't the administration that decided not to accept it. It was expressly said, you will not.
And I wasn't talking about the governor. I was talking about the administration of KNI.
No, I'm talking about that. They were told. It wasn't the governor. KNI was told you could not take any new ones unless you could document there was no other place for them.
Yeah. So, and I think Joan is going to speak to this when she gives her testimony, but CDDOs do have to determine that it's the least restrictive alternative, or they won't allow people to go into a state hospital. That's true for Parsons also. So I'm not familiar with the paper that you're talking about, but I absolutely believe it exists. But we do not have a moratorium at KNI. We are bringing people in as they can. Does that help at all? I apologize.
Yes, it did. I just wondered in between. Now, this was all before we even had CanCare, because we didn't have CanCare until 2013. So this goes way, before that. So it was like, it was just a fight. And I visited at least 6 times with various groups to look at what you have there. So that's why I was like really pleased and surprised when they successful new admissions. It took a while to get to that, but I just wondered under what circumstances.
Well, it's no longer our stance that people don't come into KNI. Kathy is trying to bring people in as the referrals come.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure if I introduced myself. I'm Mike Dixon. I'm the State Hospital Commissioner, and I'm the Superintendent at Parsons State Hospital. I'm going to talk a little bit about Parsons. Parsons has today 148 individuals. They live on 9 different residential units, and each one houses 12 to 21 people. Our age range at Parsons is 11 to 81. We're a little different than KNI. We do have a school on campus that we contract with Greenbush to run. Last fiscal year, we discharged 10 people from Parsons, and we brought in 12. 36.6 of Parsons' individuals, and I'm going to say individuals through the whole thing. We have a really strong advocacy group at Parsons, and that's what they chose. They want to be called. They don't want to be called clients or residents. So they're individuals at Parsons. But 36.6% of them are in the severe to profound range of intellectual disability. Another 36.6 is in the moderate range, and 26.8% in the mild range. Approximately 50% of our individuals at Parsons has a severe medical condition that requires intensive work. Parsons is really the safety net for the state of Kansas. Individuals in community agencies that it's no longer safe for them to be in the community, they're usually referred to Parsons. If you look at on slide 20, that's our discharges and admissions since 2015. So we try to bring people in, stabilize them, and get them back out. Slide 21, 94% of our individuals are duly diagnosed. It's not just IDD, it's some other type of, something like bipolar or schizophrenia. There's a psychiatric issue also. 77% of the individuals have a serious mental health condition. Slide 22 looks at that's the number of individuals, or the percentage of individuals that engage in property destruction, physical aggression, and self-injury. It's high. Our staff spend an awful lot of time working with pretty aberrant and aggressive behaviors. 92% of our individuals at Parsons are on some level of increased supervision. Meaning we have to know where they are. It may be that we have to have them in eyesight at all times. It gets to the point where sometimes they have to be within arm's length of a staff member so they can protect everybody around them. 4% right now are on one-on-one supervision. That means that the staff comes completely out of the count, and their only job for that entire 8 hours is just that one individual. That's their only job duty. And then 58% have to have a room to themselves. Slide number 24 is looking at the police involvement of admissions going back to 2012. Our lowest number is 68%. This past year is 90%. These individuals that we're admitting into Parsons are really causing a lot of grief and angst in the community. Our agency initiatives right now, we have a healthy sexual behavior program, which is not to be confused with the second bullet, which is SPTP reintegration facility. The healthy sexual behavior program are individuals who live at Parsons State Hospital. The SPTP they come to us from Larned, and it's a whole separate group of individuals. I'll go into a little bit more detail. We have outreach services to keep people in the community. We're in the process of creating a short-term behavior stabilization unit for individuals that they're stuck in an ER, there's no place for them to go. We're hoping to provide services to get them out, get them stabilized, and get them back into the community. We have several vocational services for our people who live there. Like I said, we have a pretty strong adult self-advocacy group. And then we also have the Parsons Research Center and Kansas University Center on Developmental Disabilities at Parsons. The Healthy Sexual Behavior Program, we've had a program that addresses sexual offenses that our individuals have created in the past since 1989. We're in the process right now of updating that program, moving away from a strictly relapse prevention response cost model and going more to a risk needs responsivity model, looking at exactly what how risky they are, and then basing their privileges and what they can do based on that model. During fiscal year 22, we assessed and treated 25 inpatients in that program and 3 outpatients, and we provided training for 100 community agency staff. As Deputy Bruner said, we do have the SPTP reintegration facility on campus. We are one of 3 hospitals, one state hospitals that have it. It's also at Osawatomie and at Larned State Hospital. These are individuals who have created or completed the inpatient part of the program at Larned. Now we're reintegrating them back into the community. We have a group of staff, 7 staff, who comprise of an outreach program. These staff are situated in different places in the state. We have 3 in Parsons, 3 in Kansas City, and 1 in Topeka, and they provide behavior stabilization services all across the state of Kansas. We served a total of 138 individuals ranging from 6 to 56 years old in 33 different cities and 3 state hospitals. We're in the process of opening this short-term behavior stabilization unit. We have remodeled a section on campus to house that program. We've hired the director. We are running into problems hiring the staff. We were funded for 12 staff. We only have 3. We're in the process of trying to recruit more people to staff that unit. Like I said, we have a pretty active vocational department on campus. We have different areas like the metal edge, laser designs. They make dog bones. They build furniture. And we have a cafe on campus that they run. We also have a horse barn and a riding arena. The riding arena they built themselves in conjunction with our staff, of course. We have an equine support program. We have therapy ponies that go out to all the units. We have LBJ deliveries, where they deliver things from the storeroom across campus. And then we have a screen printing area that is really profitable. Actually, we do shirts for all over Southeast Kansas. The Adult Self-Advocacy Group, like I said, they're a very active group. They go around, some of the things that they do, they go around and they do dental in-services to people on campus just to let people know how important it is to take care of your teeth. They assist with training. We have one individual that works for our staff training department, so they're involved in all new staff orientation. We have a cemetery close to PSH&TC, and it was kind of in disrepair. They adopted it and redid the whole cemetery. And then we have an annual stand barbecue, and they raise money, and then they give all the proceeds to charities. They're quite impressive. And then we also, on campus, we partner with KU and K-State. The Kansas University Center on Developmental Disabilities has a respite program, a payee program, and these are for people in the community, and coordinated resource support services. It also does a Kansas equipment exchange, and it has a telecommunication access program. Slide 34, which I believe Dayton has covered. I think he's covered that. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Doctor. Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just doing the math, and it's about $250,000 to take care of each individual at each facility. Do you benchmark yourself against other facilities around the country? I mean, is that a ballpark number of what it takes to take care of folks with this level of
I have not looked
IDD?
into that. That is something that we could look at, though. I haven't looked at what other places across the country
I
charges.
just wondered at your professional meetings if you happen to talk to folks and know what it takes.
My guess is yes, it's pretty close. The people that we serve at Parsons have some pretty aggressive behaviors and can't be served in the community. There's really no place for them to go. The people at K&I are really on the other side of the spectrum. They have lots of medical needs that just would not be served adequately in the community. So I don't think it's outside of what it costs across the country, but I don't have real hard data.
I'm just curious. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Ballard.
I agree with what you were saying. The assessment was done when they were trying to close K&I. And so we spent 3 years looking at the assessments of what it was like in terms. And because they had had them for so long, and you heard her say earlier, some had been there 50 years or more, that we were in the mid-range because we're Midwest pretty much. Also, we didn't have a workforce shortage, and we had what we needed, but we didn't have always exactly the particular people we needed for the situation. But it was consistent, and staff stayed a long time. So that made it a lot easier to continue to do the services. Now, I don't know what the situation would be now, but they tried to show that it was cheaper to keep them at KNI because of the consistency and the progress they made, because anytime you brought new people in, it would start all over, and then the consumer would have a difficult time adjusting. And because they did not have those facilities in communities to deal with these severe cases, especially if you came from a smaller town, and even in a more urban town, they didn't have those facilities, so you would have been doing a lot of contract and not guarantee the quality. That's the extent of what I know, but it was a big deal. Now, how it's changed now with cost, I don't know, but I still say you wouldn't be able to find the services for this population of people in the community.
And people just would not be safe, you know, and the community from the Parsons level, you know, our individuals are just so aggressive. And at KNI, with such severe medical needs, you know, putting those individuals in the community without the expertise to keep them alive, it scared me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, other questions for Dr. Dixon? Representative Barth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So nice to meet you in person. I'm Representative Carrie Barth. You and I spoke as you were the interim superintendent, and so I'm sure you're glad to only have back one responsibility, not both the OSH as well as Parsons. So I appreciate the call before I was elected. So you taught me a lot, and it was helpful to educate me on the services that you provide, especially since it's in part of my district. You mentioned some things around like the dog bones you're making and the screen printing and how that generates some revenue. Do we take that to offset some of the, and reduce some of the funds?
We do.
we're
It goes
received from
into
the
a
state?
special benefit fund that is only used for the individuals who live there. So it funds outing,
Funds,
yes,
So it reduces some of the state, you know, tax dollar
yes.
amount that we pay. Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
There's a special fund that it goes into that only certain things can be used out of that fund, so.
Committee. Representative Ballard.
They make them, and they smell wonderful. We have. They do.
Allowing the possibility for them to have employment. And there, those that can be, and so, you know, probably it's time for us to take a little tour so you can see what it's like, but I just wanted to, do they still continue to have all of those things available?
They do. And I would invite any of you to come to Parsons or KNI at any time. We'd love to give you a tour, and I bet you will become a repeat customer of our dog bones because we ship it out to everybody who comes in and tours. So
Is it, can you do it online?
you cannot.
So you have to come out
You
there?
have to come see
Oh,
us.
good.
So
I'll be knocking on your door. Thank you.
love to host any of you.
Thank you very much.
Even if I don't have a dog?
Yeah, I've never eaten them, but they do. They smell wonderful. The work site smells wonderful. So,
Are there other questions for Dr. Dixon? I had a quick one. I was kind of curious if you go back to slide 20. You're showing the admissions admitted and discharged. Assuming there's some success stories in those discharges, or how would you characterize the discharges?
We have a very low readmission rate. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but it's very low. We never, once you're an individual that lives at Parsons State Hospital, we never break contact with you. So if they start having issues in the community, we'll send a team out of people out to try to stabilize them. In the last 5 years, I think we have readmitted 2 or 3, which is a really low percentage when you look how many we're placing in the community. We just try to support them as much as we can to keep them in the community.
So if it's determined that they're adequately rehabilitated and they can be a functioning cog of society, then that is when they're discharged sometimes, or all the time?
Yeah, we will discharge people whenever the guardian says they want them discharged. We will make recommendations, but at Parsons and K&I, which is very different than the MH hospitals, you're admitted on guardian signature. So at any time, the guardian can say, I would like to place them. They're going to have to find services for them in the community, and we'll work real hard with the community provider to make sure they're successful. But a lot of times, a lot of these our philosophy at Parsons is we don't cure behavior. We teach the individuals how to manage it. That behavior is still going to be there, but we're going to give you the skills to not engage in it in the future. So lots of follow-up after we place people.
Understood. Thank you. Other questions? Last call. Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I would call Joan Kelly, Parent Guardian Group from KNI. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairman Mason and members of the committee. On behalf of our most fragile citizens unable to advocate, protect, or care for themselves, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Joan Kelly. My husband and I are co-guardians for our grandson, Aiden, now age 32, who routinely places himself and others at severe risk due to unpredictable behaviors, and yet his level of cognition remains at the 2 to 3-year-old toddler level. We raised Aiden in our home since he was 2 years old and invested thousands of dollars out of pocket diligently searching for community options. We have also endured numerous failures within the home and community-based system prior to Aiden's admission to the Kansas Neurological Institute in 2008. This subset of the highest risk individuals within the population really are often marginalized by entities speaking before legislative committees claiming that community services are ideal for everyone. While some may be sincere, I would respectfully share with the committee that most of the entities who have tried to close K&I, and I'm thinking most recently in 2010, have never lived the realities, our realities in the field, nor have they, most of them, while they may be well-meaning in their ideology, have never provided firsthand 24/7 care to the most medically complex or profoundly affected individuals who routinely exhibit extreme behaviors like our grandson. Our grandson's diagnosis is profound autism. We visit K&I every other week. We pick up our grandson every couple of weeks, bring him to our house for the day. And so I'm up there a lot, and I can tell you that it's not isolating and it's not a congregate warehouse, as some have alleged. I would like to speak to Representative Clifford and some other concerns about costs. So I'm referring back to when they tried to close K&I in 2000. Please, I ask permission to deviate a little bit from my written testimony, if that's okay.
Of course, we'd prefer that.
Okay. So when they tried to close K&I in 2010, and I'm so thankful for long-term people like Representative Ballard who get it. But anyway, they did a legislative post-audit, and so that was supposed to be pretty thorough. They chose 5 candidates to compare costs of what it would cost to, and my grandson was one of the 5 chosen to compare community cost to costs at K&I. And if you look at appendices D and E in the 2011 legislative post-audit, you will find that it cost approximately the same amount of money to serve my grandson in the community if he were properly served because of the staff ratios necessary because of his dangerous behavior. So I hope that helps enlighten the cost. The other thing that I will tell you is that there does remain a policy that the state of Kansas adopted regarding gatekeeping. But before I go into that, I would simply like to respectfully share another. In my written testimony, I shared a quote from Justice Kennedy regarding the Supreme Court Olmstead decision. But instead of reading that, I would like to read another majority and concurring opinion. And I will quote the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We emphasize that nothing in the Americans with Disabilities Act or its implementing regulations condones termination of institutional settings, nor is there any federal requirement that community-based treatment be imposed on patients who do not desire it. So the truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, is that the state of Kansas for a number of years has implemented a gatekeeping policy which places undue burden on families in crisis. It is an overreach of federal law, not just from the Olmstead case, but Medicaid law makes it very clear that a choice is to be given. And so unless families, and we had to do this to get our grandson admitted, and believe me, I don't do breakdowns, but I had about 5 of them raising my grandson. And we were in crisis, and we had to prove that we had exhausted every community option. So that policy definition can be arbitrarily interpreted, and it has been, even in recent years. And I would be happy to submit more recent documentation of how a capricious gatekeeper hired by the state dealt with one family in crisis. I did not include that information today out of courtesy for y'all. The number of families who probably would like to get in K&I are still being filtered out. In fact, they closed a home a few years ago, and the previous superintendent tried to reopen it because there is a great need, and there's family like ours that the gatekeepers are telling they can't keep out. I also realize from talking to Scott Bruner that there's also additional layers to that with regards to you got to have enough staff, and you've got to come under strict federal guidelines as an intermediate care facility. So it is complex, but I will tell you, if things were done in a more balanced way, and I'm just giving you my perspective, there would be more people admitted to K&I. I think we all know that the IDD spectrum is broad and diverse. It's very complex, but perhaps most of you don't know that there is and continues to be an explosion of individuals with autism. So the people on the profound end of the spectrum, which are a danger to themselves and others, like my grandson, actually, in fact, several of them are living in my grandson's home on the K&I campus now, simply because, as has already been stated by Mike Dixon, the levels of support and care necessary are not easily sustained in scattered settings. So I would just propose to you that if you could get, all your medical needs met, in an outpatient clinic or even in a hospital but didn't have an ICU unit, I think we would all have to say that ICU units in our hospitals are a critical part of our healthcare environment that are necessary. And the same is true for those who live at K&I. In closing, I just want to say that our families, my husband and I, are forever grateful for the continuum of compassionate and quality care that our loved ones have received at KNI over the years. And it is expensive, but I would also just say that if more people were allowed in, the economies of scale would be able to operate in a manner that's more equitable instead of artificially keeping the census lower. And that's notwithstanding, of course, that there's got to be adequate staff. But I just want to tell you, it is artificially low, and I really hope that another home will open at KNI soon, because I know the need, and I work with families in the community, in Kansas, and all over the nation. I just want to respectfully request, and I think that's probably already pretty settled, that that you recommend allocating funds in incremental wage increases for KNI, whatever that looks like, in a budget that I don't understand fully, because those are critical for the proper care of our most vulnerable citizens. And if you haven't toured KNI, or it's been a while, please do yourself a favor and see what KNI actually offers. It's home to precious individuals with the most complex needs, whose lives are worthy of your and my consideration and support. Thank you all for your patience. I am happy to provide supporting documentation of all statements made herein today, and I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Very articulate and well spoken.
Thank you.
Any questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you for being with us.
Thank you all.
That concludes the hearing on this budget, and we'll adjourn. We'll have we'll work some budgets tomorrow, and we'll hear two more. Thank you all.